Chapter 1, continued. We are now ready to return to the recognition of 10 days ago. I say recognition rather than experience for a very definite reason. Properly, it was not a case of experiential knowledge, which is knowledge from the senses, whether gross or subtle, nor knowledge from deduction, though both forms, particularly the latter, have helped in a subsidiary sense. It was an awakening to a knowledge which I can best represent by calling it knowledge through identity, and thus the process, insofar as we can speak of process in this connection at all, is best expressed by the word recognition. I had been sitting in a porch swing, reading as previously stated. Ahead of the sequence in the book, I turned to the section devoted to liberation, as I seemed to feel an especial hunger for this. I covered the material quickly, and it all seemed very clear and satisfactory. Then, as I sat afterward, dwelling in thought upon the subject just read, suddenly it dawned upon me that a common mistake made in the higher meditation, i.e., meditation for liberation, is the seeking for a subtle object of recognition, in other words, something that could be experienced. Of course, I had long known the falseness of this position theoretically, yet had failed to recognize it. Here is a subtle but very important distinction. At once I dropped expectation of having anything happen. Then, with eyes open, and no sense stopped in functioning, hence no trance, I abstracted the subjective moment, the I am, or Atman, element, from the totality of the objective consciousness manifold. Upon this I focused. Naturally, I found what, from the relative point of view, is darkness and emptiness. But I realized it as absolute light and fullness, and that I was that. Of course, I cannot tell what it was in its own nature. The relative forms of consciousness inevitably distort non-relative consciousness. Not only can I not tell this to others, I cannot even contain it within my own relative consciousness, whether of sensation, feeling, or thought. Every metaphysical thinker will see this impossibility at once. I was even prepared not to have the personal consciousness share in this recognition in any way. But in this I was happily disappointed. Presently I felt the ambrosia quality in the breath with the purifying benediction that it casts over the whole personality, even including the physical body. I found myself above the universe, not in the sense of leaving the physical body and being taken out in space, but in the sense of being above space, time, and causality. My karma seemed to drop away from me as an individual responsibility. I felt intangibly, yet wonderfully, free. I sustained this universe and was not bound by it. Desires and ambitions grew perceptibly more and more shadowy. All worldly honors were without power to exalt me. Physical life seemed undesirable. Repeatedly through the days that followed, I was in a state of deep brooding, thinking thoughts that were so abstract that there were no concepts to represent them. I seemed to comprehend a veritable library of knowledge, all less concrete than the most abstract mathematics. The personality rested in a gentle glow of happiness, but while it was very gentle, yet it was so potent as to dull the keenest sensuous delight. Likewise, the sense of world pain was absorbed. I looked, as it were, over the world, asking, what is there of interest here? What is there worth doing? I found but one interest, the desire that other souls should also realize this that I had realized, for in it lay the one effective key for the solving of their problems. The little tragedies of men left me indifferent. I saw one great tragedy, the cause of all the rest, the failure of man to realize his own divinity. I saw but one solution, the realization of this divinity. Since that day I have been repeatedly in the current of ambrosia. Often I turned to it, with the ease of a subtle movement of thought. Sometimes it breaks out spontaneously. Thought and bodily action can be continued in it, provided a subtle kind of inner concentration is not broken. But consciousness focused in action, whether intellectual or physical, stops the current. The presence of some people affects it adversely, while that of others does not. The effect on the body is interesting. The after effect of this surprisingly gentle current, with all its exquisite delight, is a feeling of intangible tiredness in the body, somewhat like that which would be experienced after a period of protracted pain. Physical effort is difficult. The reason for this seems to be evident. One effect of the current is clearly purifying, and this action upon the matter of the body is something of an ordeal. There is no emotional nor intellectual discomfort, save that without the current, the world seems barren. I am studying the effect of the current upon others. Sharifa is immediately responsive to it and recognizes its presence, at times even before I do. It will grip an audience, but those who have heretofore given recognition to a consciousness of substantially lower quality do not seem to be aware of the ambrosia. Perhaps it is too subtle. Footnote. At the present date, almost 2½ years after writing the above, this statement must be strongly modified. After 2 intervening seasons on the lecture platform combined with several personal contacts, it has been clearly determined that a surprising number of individuals are susceptible to the current. In some natures, it is quite readily induced. August 20th. On the evening of the 17th, we attended a musical concert at the Hollywood Bowl. The audience was extremely large. During the early part of the program, I had a sense of the crowd as an enormous weight upon consciousness. It was so heavy I could not pierce through it. Later, during the performance of certain Bach selections, there was a distinct easing up of the weight and a mild tingling along the spine. Consciousness did rise in some measure, but not to the level of the current. On the 19th, we returned home. I felt deeply tired and was unable to rise in consciousness. It seems that the inward penetration does make some demand upon the body. Life without the elixir has become more empty than it was before the current was first experienced. Mere external affairs utterly fail to hold my interest. The conditions of town life seem definitely adverse to holding consciousness within the current of bliss. Driving an automobile in traffic is particularly inimical. The reason seems quite clearly to be that under these conditions, it is much more difficult to hold the inner concentration unbroken. To steer away through the outer confusion requires objective concentration. I, at least, cannot yet move through these conditions with safety by giving only a peripheral attention to them. Perhaps it may be possible to establish the correlation so that it will hold under these adverse conditions, but the demand upon the vital strength is severe.